this dividend policy? See, the shareholders invest their money in a company, in which case they expect certain return for their investment which is made. That return is what is called as dividend. Dividend is a return for investment to equity shareholders. How much of dividend should be given to the shareholders? I know the organization is raising capital to run its business, and with the capital that is raised, it is going to invest in certain projects and make profits. How is that profits going to be invested? That profit, how is that profits going to be distributed? That profit will be distributed in the form of interest to the debenture holders and dividend to the shareholders. How much of dividend must be given to the shareholder? Interest is a fixed amount, correct? 10% debentures means whatever is the earnings, interest is going to remain fixed. So there is no confusion. It will be the fixed interest which will be paid to the debenture holders. But when it comes to equity, the dividend will keep fluctuating because the shareholders are the owners of the company. With more the earnings, the shareholders will expect more dividend. So what am I trying to convey here? I am trying to convey that with more of earnings made by the organization, the expectation of shareholders also will increase. In such case, how much of earnings should be declared as dividend? How much of earnings should be retained by the organization? You would have studied in financial accounts and in company accounts the concept of reserves and surplus and retained earnings, correct? Not all earnings are distributed as dividend to shareholders. A certain portion of earnings are retained. Why is it retained? To meet contingencies in future. That's the reason for retained earnings. So how much of dividend is to be declared and how much of earnings are to be retained? It is based on three different theories. The three different theories are Walter model, Gordon model, Modigliani and Miller model. Again, Modigliani and Miller is coming here. Here, this Modigliani and Miller model's theory is for dividend policy. Earlier, we studied about capital structure. This is different for dividend policy. Now coming to Walter model. There are three theories for the dividend policy. How much of dividend is to be given to the shareholders? That will help you maximize the value of the firm. Okay. So the dividend policy will help you to determine the market value of the share. The market value of the share will rise based on the dividend policy followed by the organization. Market price of the share will increase based on dividend policy followed by the organization. So now coming to Walter's model. There are three different models. Walter's model, Gordon model and Modigliani and Miller model. Now coming to Walter model. Under Walter model, the market price of the share is determined using the formula D plus R by K into E minus D divided by K. This is the formula. Okay. What is D? D is dividend per share. E is earnings per share. R is the rate of return. K is the cost of capital. 1 minute. I'm receiving a call. 1 minute. No. Every model you will get different answers because every model has their own way of conception for the price of the share. Okay. The model will be specified in the question or you will have some hint to know which model we have to apply. Okay. So Walter model, Gordon model and Modigliani and Miller model. These are the three models for dividend policy. First coming to Walter model. What is under Walter model? The market price of the share is determined using the formula D plus R by K into E minus D divided by K. What is this? D is the dividend per share, E is the earnings, then K is the cost of capital, R is the rate of return, and P is the market price per share. What does Walter say? Walter says the price of the share. What is this dividend policy as such? Whether it is Walter or Gordon or whoever, Modigliani and Miller or whoever. The dividend policy followed by the organization will influence the market price per share. So the dividend policy of the organization, when it is going to influence the market price per share, I have to declare a dividend optimally. அதாவது கரெக்டா டிக்ளேர் பண்ணணும் டிவிடெண்ட். இருக்கிற மொத்த அணிங்ஸையும் தூக்கியும் கொடுத்துடக்கூடாது, அதுக்குன்னு எல்லாத்தையும் நம்ம கையிலையும் வச்சுக்கூடாது. ஓரளவுக்கு நம்ம பார்த்து கொடுக்கணும் டிவிடெண்ட. அந்த டிவிடெண்டை நம்ம எப்படி கொடுப்போம் அப்படிங்கிறதுக்கு there are 3 models: வால்டர் மாடல், கார்டன் மாடல், மோடிக்லானி அண்ட் மில்லர் மாடல். ஆனா வால்டர் என்ன சொல்றாருன்னா, வால்டர் is in 2 extremes. He says either give the entire earnings as dividend or retain the entire earnings without giving any dividend. So he is in 2 extremes. Why is he in 2 extremes? Because he compares the rate of return with cost of capital. I can give you an example. See, எனக்கு வந்து நான் ஒரு கம்பெனில ஷேர்ஸ்ல இன்வெஸ்ட் பண்ணியிருக்கேன், சரியா? 1 lakh worth of investment in share capital for a company பண்ணியிருக்கேன். பண்ணதுல எனக்கு வந்து டிவிடெண்ட் 20,000 வருதுன்னு வச்சுக்கோங்க. நான் 1 lakh இன்வெஸ்ட் பண்ணியிருக்கேன், எனக்கு 20% டிவிடெண்ட் வருது. 20% டிவிடெண்ட் வந்தோடனே அந்த பணத்தை நான் என்ன பண்ணுவேன்? செலவு பண்றது அது விட்டுறலாம். அந்த 20,000 instead of spending, if I am going to invest, இப்ப வந்து இந்த 1 lakh capital if I am holding in X Limited னு வச்சுக்கோமே, X Limitedல 1 lakh capital வச்சிருக்கேன். அந்த 1 lakh capitalக்கு எனக்கு this particular year 2021 வச்சுப்போம், 2021க்கு எனக்கு 20% டிவிடெண்ட் கொடுத்தாங்க. 20,000 கேஷ் டிவிடெண்ட் எனக்கு வந்தது. Under 20,000 cash dividend, you have an option of spending. So just ignore that for the time being. Instead of spending, what do you think? You feel அந்த 20,000 என் கையில இருந்தா செலவாயிடும், நான் அதை திருப்பி இன்வெஸ்ட் பண்றேன் அப்படின்ட்டு I think. Okay. So when I think, I will consider the return from X itself or the return elsewhere. How much is the return from X? இப்ப எனக்கு 20,000 அவங்க டிவிடெண்ட் கொடுத்துருக்காங்க, அத நான் திருப்பி எடுத்த முதல்ல திருப்பி போடுறதுன்னு சொல்லுவாங்க தெரியுமா? சோ இஃப் ஐ எம் கோயிங் டு ரீஇன்வெஸ்ட் இன் எக்ஸ் லிமிடெட், எக்ஸ் லிமிடெட்ல ஆல்ரெடி எனக்கு எவ்வளவு கேபிட்டல் இருக்கு? 1 lakh இருக்கு. 20,000 டிவிடெண்ட் கொடுத்தாங்களா? அந்த 20,000 டிவிடெண்ட நான் திருப்பி எக்ஸ்லயே போடட்டுமா இல்ல ஒய் கம்பெனில போடட்டுமா அப்படின்ட்டு நான் யோசிப்பேன். ஸ்பெண்டிங்க அவாய்ட் பண்ணிடுங்க, நான் எனக்கு செலவே பண்ண வேண்டாம், எனக்கு வந்து செலவு பண்றதுக்கு வேற தனியா பைசா இருக்கு. சோ எனக்கு இந்த ஷேர்ஸ்ல இருந்து வந்த பணத்தை ஒண்ணு நான் எக்ஸ்ல போடுவேன் இல்ல வைல போடுவேன். எதுல போடுவேன்? பேஸ்ட் ஆன் வாட் ரிட்டர்ன் ஐ கெட். கரெக்டா? இப்ப எக்ஸ்ல போட்டா எனக்கு 20% ரிட்டர்ன், வைல போட்டா 24% ரிட்டர்ன். நான் எக்ஸ்ல போடுவேனா வைல போடுவேனா? Are you able to follow me? I have invested 1 lakh in capital. I have invested 1 lakh in capital for X Limited. Okay. X Limited has given me a dividend of 20,000 rupees. My idea is to reinvest that 20,000 rupees. When I am going to reinvest that 20,000 rupees, X gives me a return of 20%, Y gives me a return of 24%. Will I invest in X or in Y? Hello? இருக்கீங்களா இல்லையா? Okay, you will invest in Y, right? So when you are 1 minute. When you are reinvesting in Y, what are you considering? You are considering rate of return, correct? You are considering rate of return, right? So when the rate of return is, suppose instead of money 20,000, 24,000, 20%, 24% சொன்னேன், சரியா? So when the rate of return from your organization itself is less, for an organization, if the rate of return for the organization is less than its cost, நான் எந்திலேயே இன்வெஸ்ட் பண்ணா எனக்கு வந்து ரிட்டர்ன் கம்மியா வருது, for the cost which I have to bear. In such case, I will hand over the money to the shareholders and let them invest in another company later. இப்ப அவங்க அந்த 20,000 டிவிடெண்ட் இருந்ததுல, அந்த 20,000 டிவிடெண்ட நான் என் கம்பெனில இன்வெஸ்ட் பண்ணேன்னா I will get more rate of return for the cost to be borne அப்படின்னா I will suggest 100% retention. That is what I'm trying to explain. As per Walter model, he is at two different extremes. What are the two extremes? Either pay out 100% of earnings or retain 100% of earnings. What are the factors he is going to consider for payout? He is going to compare R and K. What is this R? R is the rate of return because of investing in a project. K is the rate of dividend. If investing in a project is giving you 24% return and the cost is only 20%, which means the return is more when the second alternative, when the return because of investing in a project is 24%, but the dividend is 20%, the return is more. When the return is more, you retain the money with yourself. With yourself means with the company. Okay. Suppose நான் வந்து ஒரு ப்ராஜெக்ட்ல இன்வெஸ்ட் பண்ணா எனக்கு 18% தான் ரிட்டர்ன் வரும். ஆனா நான் ஷேர் ஹோல்டருக்கு டிவிடெண்ட் 20% கொடுக்கணும் அப்படின்னா the rate of return from the project is less than the cost. In such case, it is not viable to invest in that particular project. ஏன்னா எனக்கு லாஸ் ஆயிடும். எனக்கு ப்ராஜெக்ட்லேருந்து வர ரிட்டர்னே 18% தான், ஆனா காஸ்ட் 20% to the shareholders. அப்படி இருக்கும்போது the organization will be at loss. In such case, investment must not be made in the project. Instead, the entire dividend must be declared as payout. Is it clear? The formula for determining the market price of the share is D plus R by K into E minus D divided by K. Later, coming to the next model, which is Miron-Gordon model. What is Miron-Gordon saying? Miron-Gordon says, whatever might be the situation about R or K or whatever, the organization has to declare dividend every year to keep the shareholders happy. அதாவது இப்ப ஒரு லேமேனா, இப்ப நீங்க இத்தனை பேர் இருக்கீங்கல்ல கிளாஸ்ல, நீங்க வந்து ஒரு ஷேர் ஹோல்டரா இருந்தீங்கன்னா, will you forego dividend on a particular year? உங்களுக்கு ஒரு வருஷம் டிவிடெண்ட் கொடுக்கலன்னா பரவாயில்லையா? Will you be happy if you are not getting a return on investment? No. In such case, what is the expectation of the investor? Expectation of investor is he should get regular returns from his investment, which means Miron-Gordon says, the organization must declare a dividend year after year to keep the shareholders satisfied. So irrespective of earnings or the returns or the cost of capital, dividend has to be declared every year. In such case, the market price of the share is determined using the formula D1 by KE minus G. All these formula has a derivation. That derivation you will study at final level. So for now, you just remember the formula. As per Miron-Gordon model, P is equal to D1 by KE minus G. What is D1? It is dividend for which is expected to be declared. D1 is dividend of the next year. Okay. Divide by KE minus G. KE should always be greater than G. Loss-making company will not pay dividend. Yes. Interim dividend is dividend paid during the year. G is growth rate. D1 divided by KE minus G, where KE should be greater than G. ஏன்னா வந்து KE விட G அதிகமா இருந்ததுன்னா கீழே நெகட்டிவ் வேல்யூ ஆயிடும். கரெக்டா? KE 10%, G 15% இருந்ததுன்னா கீழே நெகட்டிவ் வேல்யூ ஆயிடும். அதனால KE should always be greater than G. What is G? G is growth rate. How am I going to find this growth rate? It is B into R. What is B? It is the retention of cash flows into R, which is the rate of return. That will measure the growth rate. So G is equal to B into R. B is the retention ratio. R is the rate of return. Sum போடுறச்சே உங்களுக்கு புரியும். உங்களுக்கு இந்த derivation of formula intermediate level க்கு it is not required. The derivation of formula you will study in detail in two papers. SFM paperலையும் படிப்பீங்க, business valuation paperலையும் படிப்பீங்க final levelல. முதல்ல நம்ம இன்டர் பாஸ் பண்ணுவோம். So now coming to Miron-Gordon model, P is equal to D1 divided by KE minus G, where D1 is the dividend expected to be declared, KE is the cost of equity, which you should be aware, G is the growth rate, How is that growth rate computed? B into R. What is B? B is the retention ratio. R is the rate of return. Okay. Now, last hypothesis is Modigliani and Miller hypothesis. So, Modigliani and Miller தான் யார் எங்க போனா என்ன நம்ம என்ன வந்தது நம்ம அப்படியே தான் இருப்போம் அப்படிங்கிறது Modigliani and Miller. What does Modigliani and Miller say அப்படின்னு பாத்தீங்கன்னா நீ டிவிடெண்ட் கொடு டிவிடெண்ட் கொடுக்காம போ என்ன பண்ணாலும் வேல்யூ ஆஃப் ஃபர்ம் will remain unaffected. That is Modigliani and Miller hypothesis. So, Walter என்ன சொன்னாங்க declare dividend when R is less than K. அதாவது ப்ராஜெக்ட்ல இன்வெஸ்ட் பண்ணி எனக்கு ரிட்டர்ன் கம்மியா வந்ததுன்னா நான் அதை ப்ராஜெக்ட்ல இன்வெஸ்ட் பண்றதுக்கு பதிலாக டிவிடெண்டா கொடுத்துருவேன். டிவிடெண்டா கொடுத்தா அந்த இன்வெஸ்டர் எங்க வேணா போய் இன்வெஸ்ட் பண்ணிக்கிட்டான், என் கம்பெனில போட வேண்டாம். So when R is less than K, 100% payout. When R is greater than K, 100% retention. So Walter decided dividend declaration based on comparison of R and K. Miron Gordon என்ன சொன்னாரு, உங்களுக்கு sufficient profits இருக்கோ இல்லையோ keep the shareholders satisfied, keep giving dividend regularly. Reinvestment plan பத்திலாம் பேசாதீங்க. ஏன்னா வால்டர் என்ன சொன்னாங்க, ரீஇன்வெஸ்ட் இன்டு தி பிசினஸ் சொன்னாங்க. அது ரீஇன்வெஸ்ட் இன்டு தி பிசினஸ் ஒரு 5 இயர்ஸ் லேட்டர் அது ரியலைஸ் ஆச்சுன்னா 5 இயர்ஸ் லேட்டர் நான் இருப்பேனான்னு தெரியாது, ஏன்னா கோவிட் இருக்கு. So 5 years later we do not know whether we will be alive or not. So live the life for now. That is the rule, right? So as per Miron Gordon, what he says declare dividend every year to keep the shareholders satisfied. How is market price determined? It is D1 divided by KE minus G. G is the growth rate, which is B into R. B is the retention rate. Modigliani and Miller தான் வந்து எதுக்குமே அசராத மனுஷன். அவர் வந்து என்ன சொல்றாரு, நீங்க டிவிடெண்ட் கொடுத்தாலும் சரி கொடுக்கலனாலும் சரி வேல்யூ ஆஃப் த firm will remain unaltered அப்படின்னு சொல்றாரு. Okay. For which he says the price of the share is determined as D1 plus P1 divided by 1 plus KE. So what is P1 then? It is P0 into 1 plus KE minus D1. It is simple cross multiplication. P0 is equal to D1 plus P1 by 1 plus KE. What is P1 then? It is P0 into 1 plus KE minus D1. Is it clear? Is it clear? Fine. Now, please take sums. We will discuss one sum and then wind off today's class. Those are the 3 formulae which you have to blindly apply for the sum based on the model which is asked. Please take illustration 33. MM says, irrespective of dividend declaration or not, the value of firm will remain unaltered. I will prove it in a sum, not to worry. MN says the value of firm will remain unaltered irrespective of whether the organization declares dividend or not. நீங்க டிவிடெண்ட் கொடுத்தாதான் நீங்க நல்லவங்க இல்லைன்னா நீங்க கெட்டவங்க அப்படின்ற பர்செப்ஷனே Modigliani and Millerக்கு இல்ல. டிவிடெண்ட் கொடுக்கலன்னா என்ன பண்ண போறாங்க, ஏமாத்திட்டு ஓடிடுவாங்களா? ஏமாத்திட்டுலாம் ஓட மாட்டாங்க. Because shareholders are the owners of the company. So dividend கொடுக்கலன்னா என்ன ஆகும்? It is going to be reinvested in the business. யாருக்காக ரீஇன்வெஸ்ட் பண்றாங்க? நமக்காக தானே ரீஇன்வெஸ்ட் பண்றாங்க. கடைசியில நமக்கு மொத்தமா வரும். இப்ப பிட்ஸ் அண்ட் பீசஸா வரதுக்கு பதிலா மொத்தமா கடைசியில வரும். அவ்வளவுதான். புரியுறதா? Shareholders are the owners of the company. So விட்டுட்டுலாம் ஓடில போக முடியாது. Right. Illustration 33. Sahu and company earns ₹6 per share, having capitalization rate of 10%. Return on investment is 20%. According to Walter's model, what should be the price per share at 30% dividend payout ratio? Is this the optimum payout ratio as per Walter? So, earnings வந்து ₹6 கொடுத்திருக்காங்க. Capitalization rate, which is cost of capital, is 10%. Return on investment is 20%. How much is dividend? 30% dividend payout. Earnings la ₹6 earnings la 30% dividend pota 1.8 is dividend. So they have told Walter's model. How do you find the price of the share? It is D plus R by K into E minus D divided by K. How much is D? 1.8. How much is R? 20% is the return on investment. Capitalization rate, which is the cost of capital, is 10%. Into earnings is 6 rupees. Dividend is 1.8 divided by 0.1. Solve for it. You will get 102 as the price of the share. Later, is this the optimum payout ratio as per Walter? Walter என்ன சொன்னாங்க? Compare R and K. R வந்து 20%, K 10%. The rate of return because of investing in a project is more than the cost. அப்படி இருக்கும்போது என்ன பண்ணோம்? Dividend கொடுக்க கூடாது. Entire money has to be reinvested in the business. Optimal payout ratio will be 0%. Okay. In such case, என்ன ஆகும்? நம்ம வந்து இதுக்கு proof பண்ணுவோமா? திருப்பி, when the dividend payout is 0%, price of the share என்னன்னு போடுங்க? 120 வருது. இங்க dividend payout 30% இருந்ததா questionல? கொடுத்த போது price of the share எவ்வளவு இருந்தது? 102. ஆனா, when comparing R and K, what do I find? I find dividend payout should be 0%. Why? Because R is greater than K. Only then you can maximize the price of the share. அப்படிங்கிறதா conception about Walter. So, suppose அதுக்கு proof கேட்டாங்கன்னா என்ன பண்றோம்? நான் இங்க டிவிடெண்ட் கொடுக்க போறது இல்ல. ஏன் கொடுக்க போறது இல்ல? R is greater than K. அப்படின்னா D வந்து 0. Entire earnings is reinvested into the business. அப்படி போட்டா price of the share என்ன வருது? 120 வருது. நான் 30% டிவிடெண்ட் கொடுத்தா price of the share 102 தான். ஆனா நான் டிவிடெண்டே கொடுக்கலனா price of the share 120. அப்படின்னா என்னோட ஷேரோட மதிப்பு நான் கூடணும்னு நினைப்பேனா குறையணும்னு நினைப்பேனா? I am a shareholder of the company. Will I expect my share value to increase or decrease? Increase. When will it increase? When no dividend is declared? When dividend is declared, the market price is 102 per share. When dividend is not declared, the market price is 120 per share. So which is the ideal situation? Do not declare dividend will be the conclusion here because R is greater than K. The entire dividend must be reinvested into the business. Is this clear? Is this some clear? Why? One minute. Market price of the share, dividend கொடுக்கல. Dividend கொடுக்காம இந்த ஃபார்முலால போட்டேனா market price of the share அதிகமா ஆறுதே. இங்க 102 இருக்கு, இங்க 120 இருக்கு. ஏன் அதிகமா இருக்குன்னா R is greater than K. அந்த dividend பணத்தை நான் திருப்பி பிசினஸ்லயே ரீஇன்வெஸ்ட் பண்ணேனா எனக்கு business is giving you more returns. R is the return on investment. K is the cost of capital. Return is greater than cost. அப்படின்னா நமக்கு லாபம் தானே? நமக்கு லாபம்னா obviously price-உம் increase ஆகும். You see, where under that, the market price of the share is determined based on declaration of dividend by the organization. Such dividend can be declared using any of the three models. One was Walter's model, next it was Gordon's model, and finally it was Modigliani and Miller model. What did Walter say? Walter said, compare the return on investment with the cost of capital. If the return is less than cost, do not invest in a project. Instead, give away the entire money to the shareholders in the form of dividend. Let the shareholders invest it in some other project or in some other organization. So, when the rate of return from the project is less than the cost, which means it is going to end up in a loss. Hence, 100% payout has to be given. When the rate of return is more than the cost of capital or the dividend rate, in such case, 100% retention of funds is necessary because the organization will grow in such case. Okay. How is the market price of the share determined using Walter's model? P is equal to D plus R by K into E minus D divided by K, where D is the dividend per share, R is the rate of return on investment, K is the cost of capital, E is the earnings. Okay. So this is similar to the cash flows running until perpetuity, which I told in time value of money, where the formula is cash flows divided by the rate of return. This was Walter's model. Next, we moved into Miron-Gordon model. What did Miron say? The investors prefer present money rather than future money. They are bothered about dividend every year. To keep the investors satisfied, they have to be rewarded every year in the form of dividend. So how is the price of the share computed? It is computed as D1 divided by KE minus G, where KE should always be greater than G. Otherwise, the denominator will turn to a negative number. What is this G? This G is the growth rate. How is this growth rate computed? It is based on how much of funds is retained. It will grow at the respective rate of return. The retained earnings is what is called as B. B is the retention ratio. How much ever the earnings are retained, it will be reinvested into the organizational projects, fetching you a rate of return. So G is equal to B into R. So how am I going to find the price of the share? The price of the share is determined as D1 divided by KE minus G. What is this D1? It is cash flows arising because of investing in shares, right? So it is cash flows because of investing in shares divided by R minus D, which will give you the price of the share. Here, it is not just D0, it is D1. What do you mean by D1? D1 is expected dividend to be declared by the organization. It is not the present dividend. It is the dividend of the next year, which we call as D1. As per Modigliani and Miller, what does he say? Whether an organization declares dividend or not, the value of the firm will remain unaffected. According to him, how are we going to determine the price of the share? It is D1 plus P1 divided by 1 plus KE. So, in case if they are asking you the current market price of the share, you will apply this formula. If they are asking you the future market price of the share or the market price of the share at the end of year 1, in such case, you have to solve for P1. How do you solve for P1? P0 into 1 plus KE minus D1 will give you P1. This is Modigliani and Miller hypothesis. These concepts I explained in the last class itself and we discussed first sum. Do you all remember? Now let's do the next sum. Could you all follow? Hello. Fine. So now coming to the next sum in dividend policy. We will quickly finish. Today's class will be 11 to 1. I will be present until 1 p.m. What was the sum we did last class? The sum we did last class was Sahu and Company, illustration 33, right? Illustration 33, Sahu and Company was the last sum we discussed, right? So now please take so yes, 3 lakhs, 12 lakhs. 1 minute. I'm just looking for the sum. Yeah, please take illustration 38, page number 436. Illustration 38, page number 436. So what is told in this sum? The following figures are collected from the annual reports of XYZ Limited. Net profit is 30 lakhs. Outstanding, have you all found that sum? Annual report of XYZ Limited. Could you all identify that sum? Yeah. So net profit is 30 lakhs. Outstanding 12% preference shares is 100 lakhs. Number of equity shares is 3 lakhs. Return on investment is 20%. What should be the approximate dividend payout ratio so as to keep the share price at rupees 42 by using Walter's model? So here again in the question, they have told us to use Walters model. They have also given us the share price. What do we do using Walters model? For the dividend declared, how much is the share price is what we find, correct? What is the formula? P is equal to D plus R by K into E minus D divided by K. So substituting the values in the formula, we used to find P. But here they have given us P. How much is the P? The share price is 42 rupees. Having given us P, what are they asking us for? Page number 436. Having given us the dividend, having given us the share price of 42 rupees, what are they asking us for? They are asking us for the dividend to be given, right? So what is told in the question? 30 lakhs is net profit. On that, how much is preference dividend? 100 lakhs is share capital, and on that 12% is the rate of dividend. So the total net profit minus preference dividend will give you earnings to equity shareholders. Having known the earnings to equity shareholders, they have also given us the number of equity shares. Divide them, you will get the earnings per share as rupees 6. Okay. Then what other information have they told us? They have told us return on investment is 20%. There is one information which is missing in the question. You cannot assume it for yourself. K is equal to 16% is missing in the question. You can take a note of it. Question is incomplete on K. You cannot assume K for yourself. The question is incomplete. So please note down that K is 16%. They have also given us the price of the share, which is 42 rupees. What is the question? What should be the approximate dividend payout ratio so as to keep the share price at 42? So that dividend payout ratio, we do not know. I am assuming it as X. X on what? X on earnings. So just an example, if the dividend payout ratio has been given as 50%, how will you find dividend? The dividend will be 6 rupees of earnings per share. On that, 50% is dividend, which means 3 rupees per share is dividend. So why am I telling this? X is a percentage which is unknown. What unknown? It is the dividend payout ratio which is unknown. That percentage on which will I apply? I will apply that percentage on earnings. So the dividend will be 6x, not just X. This X is the percentage. On what are you going to apply this percentage? You will apply it on earnings, which means how much is dividend? Dividend is 6x. Okay. So the price of the share is equal to D plus R by K into E minus D divided by K. How much is D? It is 6x. It is not just X. X is only the percentage. Suppose 50%. X is only the percentage. On what will you apply that percentage? You will apply it on earnings. How much is earnings? 6 rupees. So 6x will be the dividend. So substitute the values which you know and leaving the unknown as X. P is the price of the share which is given to us as 42. D is 6x plus R is 0.2 divided by K is 0.16 into E minus D. E is 6 rupees per share. D is 6x divided by 0.16, which is again K. That K information was not given to you in the question. We cannot assume it for yourself. Hence, that is a missing information which you can take note of. So 42 is equal to 6x plus 0.2 by 0.16 into 6 minus 6x divided by 0.16. Solve for x. This 0.16 in the denominator, if I cross multiply, it will go to the numerator. It becomes 42 into 0.16, which is equal to 6x plus 0.2 by 0.16 will give you 1.25 into 6 minus 6x. Open the brackets. What will happen? 42 into 0.16 is 6.12 is equal to 6x. I'm just bringing it as it is. 1.25 into 6 is 7.5 minus 1.25 into minus 6 is minus 7.5 x. Solve for x. You will get x as 52%. Is the concept clear? Here in this sum, they gave us the price of the share. They are asking how much of dividend is paid for this price. Is this clear? Right. Under Walter's model, how to find the optimum payout ratio? By comparing R and K. How much is R? R is 20%. How much is K? 16%. Is R greater than K? Yes. In such case, what will be the optimum payout ratio? Optimum payout ratio will be 0. Okay. So anyway, they have given us the market price, and for the market price, what has the KE is 60%, which is missing in the question. I told you to note it down. Optimum payout ratio is arrived by comparing R and K. In this sum, R is given as 20% and K is given as 16%. When R is greater than K, it means that the rate of return is more. When the rate of return is more, optimum payout will be 0%. Only that 0% will maximize the market price of the share. But anyway, since they have already given us a market price, for that market price, how much of dividend has been given is a question that we have arrived by solving for X. Is this unclear? Is this unclear to all of you? Right. Now please take illustration 39. Illustration 39 says the following information pertains to Messrs. XY Limited. Earnings of the company is rupees 5 lakhs. Dividend payout ratio is 60%. Number of shares outstanding is rupees 1 lakh. Equity capitalization, I cannot do anything for it. I'm having full cover here. Equity capitalization rate is 12%. Rate of return on investment is 15%. So they have given what would be the market value per share as per Walter's model. What is the optimum dividend payout ratio according to Walter's model and market value of company share at the payout ratio? What is the problem that's happening? I am having full cover here. Let me read this question once more. Illustration 39. What is told in this? The following information pertains to Messrs. XY Limited. Earnings of the company is rupees 5 lakhs. Dividend payout ratio is 60%. Number of shares outstanding is 1 lakh shares. Equity capitalization rate is 12%. Rate of return on investment is 15%. What is the question? What will be the market value per share as per Walter's model? What is the optimum dividend payout ratio according to Walter's model and the market value of the company share at that payout ratio? So here again, what are the information which is provided to us? They have given us the rate of return as 15% and the cost of capital as 12%. Okay. Equity capitalization rate is the cost of capital. They have told rate of return on investment is 15% and cost is 12%. They have given the total earnings as 5 lakhs for 1 lakh number of shares. Okay. Hence, how much is earnings per share? It is 5 lakh divided by 1 lakh, which will give you 5 rupees per share as E. Then we have to find B. How much is the dividend given? It is 60%. 60% on which will I apply? I will apply it on earnings. So 5 into 60%, 3 rupees is the dividend. So how do you find the market price of the share? They have asked that. First, the question says, what would be the market value per share as per Walter's model? How do you find the market price of the share? It is D plus R by K into E minus D divided by K. How much is D? It is 3 rupees plus. How much is R? 15%. K is 12% into E minus D. E is 5, D is 3. So into 5 minus 3. Again divide by K, which is 12%. Solve for this. You will get price of the share as 5.83. This will answer the first part of the question. What is the second part of the question? What is the optimum dividend payout ratio? according to Walter. So optimum dividend payout ratio is based on comparison of R and K. R is 15%, but K is 12%. So when I'm comparing both, I find R greater than K, which means if the investment of money is made in the project, it will fetch you a return of 15%, but the cost is only 12%, which means the organization will grow because of 100% retention. What do you mean by 100% retention? 0% payout. When is it 0% payout? When R is greater than K. Optimum payout ratio is 0% to maximize the market price of the share. So they have also asked you for proof of that. So when D is 0, how much is market price of the share? When D is 0, the market price of the share is arrived as 3.08. Earlier, when the dividend was one minute. Earlier, when the dividend was 60%, the market price of the share was only 45.8. But now, on comparison of R and K, I decided 0% as dividend, where the market price of the share increased. It has increased from 45.83 to 52.08. This 52.08 will be the maximum market price of the share. Is it clear? Is it clear to everybody? Hello? So, could everyone, for those having a problem in network, it is from your side. It should be from your side only, because from my side, I'm having full touch. Is this something all of you? So what should I do now? Right. So now coming to the next sum. Restate illustration 41. Restate illustration 41. Illustration 41, page number 438. Illustration 41, page number 438. So what is told in the sum? The following information are supplied to you. Total earnings is rupees 2 lakhs. Number of equity shares of rupees 100 each is 20,000. Dividend paid is 1,50,000. Price earning ratio is 12.5. Ascertain whether the company is following an optimum dividend policy. Find out what should be the PE ratio at which the dividend policy will have no effect on value of the share. Will your decision change if the PE ratio is 8 instead of 12.5? So there are many information which I have to understand from this question. It is not explicitly told. Number one, this sum is based on Walter's model. How did I know that this is based on Walter's model without a question mentioning me about the model at all? It is from the word optimum dividend policy. Optimum dividend policy was referred only by Walter. As per John Gordon, he said whether the organization is making any lot of earnings or no earnings, whatever, if the shareholders are satisfied by giving dividend. Montilani and Miller said there is no influence the dividend declaration on the back of the firm, which means who spoke about the optimum dividend policy? It was only Walter. Hence, when the question asks you, when the question, don't give me suggestions on what I am supposed to do. You leave and rejoin. I cannot help it. I am having full trouble here. Illustration 38, page number 436. So what is told in the sum? The following figures are collected from the annual reports of XYZ Limited. Net profit is 30 lakhs. Outstanding 12% preference shares is 100 lakhs. Number of equity shares is 3 lakhs. Return on investment is 20%. What should be the approximate dividend payout ratio so as to keep the share price at rupees 42 by using Walter's model? So they themselves have told we have to apply Walter's model. They have given you the price of the share as 42 rupees. They are asking you how much is the dividend payout ratio. How do you apply the Walter's model? The price of the share is arrived by the formula D plus R by K into E minus D divided by K. So what all information you should know? You should know D, R, K and E. Okay. What is told in the question? They have told return on investment is 20%. That is R. Okay. They have told net profit is 30 lakhs. There is some preference shares. Preference dividend is 100 lakhs into 12%. 12% preference shares. So 100 lakhs into 12%. 12 lakhs is preference dividend. Net profit minus preference dividend will give you the earnings to equity shareholders. How many number of equity shares? 3 lakh equity shares. With that, I will find the earnings per share as rupees 6. The question was incomplete. I told you to take a note. K is 16%. They have given the price of the share as 42. So you know E, R, K and P. D is what I am supposed to find. Substitute the values in the formula. What is this D? How do you find D? It is the percentage which is applied on earnings. How much ever is the earnings, on that if they say 40% is dividend payout ratio, that 40% on what are you going to apply? You are going to apply it on earnings to arrive at the amount of dividend. So here, just an example, here the earnings is 6 rupees. In case if they say 40% of earnings is given as dividend, how will you arrive at dividend? It will be 6 into 40%. That percentage only we do not know now. So I assume that percentage as X. So what will be D then? It will be 6X. This dividend is not just X. It is on earnings that you arrive at the amount of dividend. So here D is 6X plus 0.2 divided by 0.16 into E minus D. E is 6, D is 6X. Divide by 0.16. Solve for X. Cross multiply and solve for X. You get X as 52%. They have asked you, at what dividend payout ratio will the share price be 42 rupees? Dividend payout ratio of 52% will give you a share price of 42 rupees. Is this sum understood? Is this sum clear? Right. Coming to illustration 39. Earnings of the company is rupees 5 lakhs. Dividend payout ratio is 60%. Number of shares outstanding is 1 lakh. So the earnings is 5 lakhs. Number of shares is 1 lakh, which means how much is earnings for one share? It will be 5 rupees. On that, the dividend payout ratio is 60%, which means dividend is 3 rupees. They have given you equity capitalization rate, which is the cost of equity is 12%. Return on investment is given as 15%. So what are they asking you for? What would be the market value per share as per Walter's model? How do you find it? P is equal to D plus R by K into E minus D divided by K. You know all values. Substitute them. D is 3. R is 0.15, K is 0.12, E is 5, again D is 3, divide by K, which is 0.12. You get price of share as 45.83. Then what are they asking you? what is the optimum dividend payout ratio according to Walter's model and the market value of company share at that payout ratio. So, optimal dividend payout ratio as per Walter is based on the comparison of R and K. How much is R? 15%. How much is K? 12%. Is R greater than K? Yes. So, in such case, what will be the dividend payout? Dividend payout should be 0%. All the earnings should be reinvested into the business because the rate of return is more than the cost of capital. So, for an optimal dividend payout ratio of 0%, find the market price of the share. D is 0 plus R is 0.15 divided by K is 0.12 into earnings, which is 5 rupees, minus again D is 0 divided by 0.12. The market price of the share becomes 52.08. This will be the maximum market price of the share. Earlier, when the dividend payout was how much? 60%. Earlier, when the dividend payout was 60%, the market price of the share was 45.83. Now, on comparison of R and K, I find 0% dividend payout will maximize the market price of the share, and hence it is maximized at 52.08. Are you able to understand? Could you all understand? Right. Coming to the next sum. Illustration 41. Illustration 41. The following information are supplied to you. Total earnings is 2 lakhs. Number of equity shares of rupees 100 each is 20,000. Dividend paid is 1,50,000. Price earning ratio is 12.5. Ascertain whether the company is following an optimum dividend policy. Find out what should be the PE ratio at which the dividend policy will have no effect on the value of the share. Will your decision change if the PE ratio is 8 instead of 12.5? Okay. So what are we doing here? Here, the total earnings is given as 2 lakhs. Here, no part of the question tells you you're supposed to apply Walter's model. But still, I am able to find out that this sum is based on Walter's model. How? Based on the word optimal dividend policy. Who suggested an optimal dividend policy? Only Walter. Walter only suggested optimal dividend policy. What did Miron Gordon say? There is nothing called as optimal dividend policy. Every year you have to give dividend to satisfy the shareholders. Modigliani and Miller said it is not going to influence the value of the firm. Whether you give dividend, you do not give dividend, it is not going to influence the value of the firm. So who spoke of optimal dividend policy? Only Walter. So based on that word, I identify that this sum is based on Walter's model. For Walter's model, how do you find the price of the share? It is D plus R by K into E minus D divided by K. What all information you need? You need to know D, R, K and E. Okay. Have they given dividend paid of 1 lakh? Yes. How much is the number of equity shares? 20,000, which means can I arrive at dividend per share? Yes. 1,50,000 for 20,000 shares. So I can arrive at dividend payout 75% of earnings. How is it arrived? Share capital 20,000 shares into 100 rupees, which is the face value. So 20 lakhs is share capital. How much is earnings? 2 lakhs, which means 10% is the earnings on share capital. So rate of return is 10%. I need to know K. Here they have not given me information for KE. Instead, they have given me PE ratio. What is the PE ratio they have told? They have told PE ratio is 12.5. How do you find KE then? KE is 1 by PE ratio. 1 by 12.5. KE is 8%. R is 10%. KE is 8%. What is the question? Ascertain whether the company is following an optimal dividend policy. How much is the dividend payout at present now? The organization is paying 75% of its earnings as dividend. How did I arrive at 75% as dividend payout? 2 lakh is the earnings. Dividend declared is 1,50,000, which means 75% of earnings is given away as dividend, which is nothing but 7.5 rupee per share. Okay, if you are arriving at D, it is 7.5 per share. How is it 7.5 per share? Earnings is 2 lakhs. For how many shares? 20,000 shares, which means how much is earnings per share? 10 rupees. On that 10 rupees, 75% is earnings. Sorry, 75% is dividend. So 7.5 is dividend. That 7.5 you can also arrive as 1,50,000 divided by 20,000 shares. So 7.5 per share is the dividend which is given. That 7.5 of dividend is nothing but 75% of earnings. Okay. But what is the question? They are not asking you for the price of the share. They are simply asking you whether the organization is following an optimal dividend policy. How do you determine whether an organization is following an optimal dividend policy? By comparing R and K. How much is R? It is 10%. How did I arrive at 10% of R? 20 lakhs is the share capital. Earnings is 2 lakhs, which means 10% is the rate of return on investment. So R is 10%. But how much is K? It is 8%. R is greater than K. When R is greater than K, no dividend must be given by the company. Only then it will maximize the market price of the share. But what is the dividend they are giving? They are giving 75%. Hence, the organization is not following an optimal dividend policy. That will be the answer for subdivision 1. Subdivision 1 says, ascertain whether the company is following an optimal dividend policy. The organization is not following an optimal dividend policy because R is greater than K. When R is greater than K, optimal payout should be 0%. On the contrary, organization is declaring 75% of earnings as dividend. Hence, it is not an optimal payout ratio. That is first subdivision of the question. For the second subdivision of the question, what should be the PE ratio when the dividend policy will have no effect on the value of the share? For finding the value of the share, what are you doing? You are comparing R and K. When R is equal to K, what will happen? There is no influence on the value of the firm. When R is equal to K, dividend policy, what do you say? When R is greater than K, 100% retention. When R is less than K, 100% payout. So, when will you be indifferent? When will you achieve equilibrium? You will achieve equilibrium when R is equal to K. When R is equal to K, it does not make any difference whether you are declaring dividend or not. It does not make any difference in the value per share. So, when R is equal to K, the dividend policy has no effect on the value of the share. What are they asking you? What should be the PE ratio? I arrived as R being 10%. When R is equal to K, the dividend policy has no influence on the value of the firm, which means K also should be 10%. When K is 10%, what is the question? What should be the PE ratio? How do you find PE ratio? It is 1 by KE. So 1 by 0.1. So 10 will be the PE ratio. Then for the last part of the question, will your decision change if the PE ratio is 8 instead of 12.5? When the PE ratio is 8, what happens to cost of equity? It becomes 1 by 8, 1 by KE. 1 by KE is PE ratio. So KE is 1 by PE ratio. So 1 by 8, 0.125, which is 12.5% becomes the cost of equity. But what is R? R is 10%. Here when comparing K and R, what happens? The cost is more than the rate of return. 100% payout is recommended because the returns is less than the cost of capital. That's all. Is this sum understood? Is this sum understood? Here they have not asked you to find the price of the share. In your study material, they have found the price of the share also, but it is not necessary. They are asking you whether the organization is following an optimal dividend policy or not. So you will stop with your suggestion alone. Is it clear? Right. Did I stop with that in the last class? Was that the last sum we stopped in the last class? Can you all please tell me? Right. So now coming to, that's all with Walter's model. Now coming to the next model, which is Miron-Gordon model. I will tell you, please take illustration 35, you can strike out. The question itself is wrong. Illustration 35, just simply strike it out. Please take illustration 36. Please take illustration 36. So now, what is told in this sum? Mr. A is contemplating purchase of 1,000 equity shares of a company. His expectation of return is 10% before tax. No, excuse me, that's all. Ah, 37. Please take illustration 37. We'll come to 36 a little later. Please take illustration 37. A company pays a dividend of ₹2 per share with a growth rate of 7%. The risk-free rate is 9%. Market rate premium is 13%. Company has a beta factor of 1.5. However, due to the decision of the finance manager, beta is likely to increase to 1.75. Find out the present as well as likely value of the share after the decision. So, nowhere in this sum they have told we are supposed to follow Miron-Gordon model. Nowhere in this sum it is told. But still, I am able to find out that this sum is based on Miron-Gordon model. How? They have told growth rate. Who suggested growth in dividends? Miron-Gordon. Hence, the growth rate is an information which helps us to identify the model. So here it is Miron-Gordon model. How do you find the price of the share under Miron-Gordon model? It is D1 divided by KE minus G. What is D1? It is the expected dividend of the organization. It is not the current dividend. How much is current dividend? A company pays a dividend of ₹2 per share. So 2 rupees per share is the present dividend. How much is the growth rate? They have given us 7%. Then they have given certain information for us to find KE, cost of equity. Risk-free rate is 9%. The market rate of return is 13% and beta is given as 1.5. So for now, this is called as CAPM model of arriving at cost of equity, where beta is a measure of risk. Okay. So for now, you just remember the formula. Later, while coming to cost of capital, I will explain how this formula is derived. Cost of equity is RF plus beta into RM minus RF. How do you find the price of the share as per Miron-Gordon model? It is D1 by KE minus G. What is D1? It is expected dividend which the company is supposed to declare. Divide by KE minus G. You know the growth rate, but you are supposed to find KE. How do you find KE? With the given information. They have given us RF is 9%, RM is 13%, and beta is 1.5. So, how do you find KE? Using CAPM model, it is found as RF plus beta into RM minus RF. RF is 9% plus beta is 1.5 into 13 minus 9, which is RM minus RF. So, you get cost of equity as 15%. How do you find the price of the share? It is D1 by KE minus G. What information is given to us? Information given to us is only D0. How did I identify whether it is D0 or D1? Simple English. If it is given in present tense or in past tense, it is D0. If it is told in future tense, it is D1. D1 is the dividend which is not given yet. It is expected dividend. Okay. D0 is the dividend which is being given now or which has been given in the past. So, if your question says, here in this question, it says, a company pays a dividend, which means it is in present tense. So, the given information is D0. How do you arrive at D1? It will be D naught into 1 plus G. How is D naught into 1 plus G arrived? 2 into 1 plus 0.07 divide by KE minus G. How much is KE? It is 15%. How much is G? It is 7%. Solve for price of the share. You get 26.75. With that, the answer is not over. They say, however, due to the decision of finance manager, beta is likely to increase to 1.75. So, when beta becomes 1.75, what will happen? The cost of equity will change. With more of risk, more will be the return expected by shareholder. What is beta? Beta is a measure of risk. So, with more of risk, earlier it was 1.5, what? Beta. Earlier, when beta was 1.5, how much is the cost of equity? Cost of equity is the expectations of equity holders, which is 15%. With beta rising, what is beta rising to? It is rising to 1.75. With beta rising, what will happen? The expectation of shareholders also will increase. So now find the revised cost of equity. What will be the revised cost of equity? When beta is 1.75, the revised cost of equity will be RF plus beta into RM minus RF. RF is the risk-free rate of return. Beta is 1.75. Market return is 13%. Risk-free return is 9%. So you solve for it, you get cost of equity as 16%. When beta is 1.75, how much is price of the share? It is D1 divided by KE minus G. Just now I told, how do you find D1? It is D naught into 1 plus G. How do you identify from a question whether it is D naught or D1? If the information for dividend is given in the present tense or in the past tense, it is D naught. If it is given in future tense, it is D1. Okay. So they have told the company pays a dividend. So it is in present tense. So 2 into 1 plus 0.07 divide by 0.16, which is 16%, minus 0.07, which will give you the price of the share. Here the price of the share is 23.78 rupees. Is it understood? In your study material, they have not taken D1 properly. They have made a mistake in taking D1, which is wrong. Your study material answer for illustration 37 is wrong. So just ignore it. Is it understood so far? Clear to everybody? Can I have some response, please? Could you all hear me? Fine. Right. I hope there is no network issues today. Inni clear ah kekkardana pesardu? Right. Now coming to illustration 36. Please take illustration 36. What is told here? Mr. A is contemplating purchase of 1,000 equity shares of a company. His expectation of return is 10% before tax by way of dividend, with an annual growth of 5%. The company's last dividend was 2 per share. So, ரொம்ப clear இருக்கு. Company's last dividend. So, it is past tense. So, D naught is 2. How do you find D1? It is D naught into 1 plus G. The company's last dividend was rupees 2 per share. Even as he is contemplating, Mr. A suddenly finds, due to budget announcement, the dividend have been exempted from tax in the hands of recipients. But the imposition of dividend distribution tax on the company is likely to lead to a fall in dividend of 20 paise per share. A's marginal tax rate is 30%. Required, calculate what should be Mr. A's estimate of price of the share before and after budget announcement. So, what has the budget made an announcement into? First, how are you identifying that this sum is as per Miron-Gordon model? based on the growth rate given. So here again, nowhere in this sum they have told you are supposed to follow Miron-Gordon model. Nowhere in this sum they have told. How did you identify that this sum is based on Miron-Gordon model? Based on the growth rate which they have provided. Because only Miron-Gordon spoke about growth in dividends. Only Walter spoke about optimal dividend. Modigliani and Miller said whether you give dividend, you do not give dividend, value of firm remains unaltered. Okay. These three people told three different things. Now, this sum is based on Miron-Gordon model, which is clear to us. What are the information which is provided? They have told the company's last dividend. So it is in past tense. D0 is 2 rupees. Growth is 5%. Then they say the tax rate is 30% and the cost of equity. Where is the cost of equity? His expectation of return is 10% by way of before tax by way of dividends. So the expectation of the investor becomes the cost to the company. So cost of equity is 10%. What has happened in the budget? In the budget, they say the dividend is exempted from tax in the hands of recipient. What was happening before declaration of budget? The organization will give away dividend to the shareholders. On the dividend, the shareholders will personally pay income tax. That was what was happening earlier. Later, after the budget announcement, what happened? The recipient, whoever is the shareholder, to whom you are giving dividend, that dividend is exempt in the hands of the recipient. So, does it mean the organization should not pay any tax on such dividend? No. That tax burden now falls on the organization. What is told? They have told Mr. A suddenly finds that due to budget announcement, dividend is exempted from tax in the hands of recipient. So, the individual, whoever is the shareholder, he need not pay tax. He is tax exempted for such dividend. But the imposition of dividend distribution tax on the company. So, the company is now supposed to pay the dividend tax. Okay. Is likely to lead to a fall in dividend of 20 paise per share because the company is going to pay the dividend distribution tax. The dividend is now going to reduce and A's marginal tax rate is 30%. So how do you find the price of the share before budget announcement and after budget announcement? Before budget announcement, it is simple D1 by KE minus G. How do you find D1? It is D0 into 1 plus G. How much is D0? 2 rupees into 1 plus 0.05, which is the growth rate, divide by KE minus G. How much is KE? 10%. How much is growth rate? 5%. So divide by KE minus G. So you get the price of the share as 42 rupees. This is before budget when the organization is not going to bother about the tax on dividends. I give away the dividend to the shareholders. Later it becomes the shareholders' problem whether to pay dividend tax or not pay dividend tax. It is shareholders' headache. Let organization not bring it into its head. That was before budget. What happened after budget? After budget, the shareholder was exempted from dividend distribution tax. But the organization had to pay tax on dividends. Okay. So what happens after budget because of that? The dividend reduces to the extent of 0.2 per share. How much was D0? It was 2 rupees minus 0.2. So the D0 becomes 1.8. Growth will be on the dividend. So 1.8 into 1.05. What happens to the cost now? Cost was earlier 10% without tax. Now you have 30% tax. That 30% tax now who is going to bear? The organization is going to bear. So 10% is the cost of equity minus 30% of tax on that particular cost will give you 7% as the net cost of equity. 7% being the net cost of equity minus the growth rate, you will arrive at the revised value of the share. That's all. Is this some understood? When the dividend distribution tax is not on the company, I will not subtract any tax from my cost. But when I am paying tax for the dividend, in such case, my cost will reduce. How will it reduce? 10% is the cost of equity. From the cost of equity, which is the return expected by the investor, 30% is given away as tax, which means what is the net return to the investor? Net return to the investor will be the cost to the company. Investor expects a return of 10% on investment. That is what is told in the first line of the question. His expectation of return is 10% before tax. So expectation of investor is 10% before tax. Now who is going to pay tax? Organization is going to pay tax. In such case, how much is the tax percentage? 30% is the tax percentage, which means after tax, how much is the expectation of investor? It will be 7%. So now what happens? I will divide the dividend which is given, divide by cost of equity minus the growth rate. Are you able to understand? Right. Now coming to the next sum. That's all with Miron-Gordon model. As per Miron-Gordon model, the value of the share is arrived as D1 divided by KE minus G. If in a question they say the company has paid a dividend, the company is paying a dividend, in such case it is D0. If they say the company will pay a dividend, the company is expected to pay a dividend, in such case it is D1. Okay. Now let's move on to Modigliani and Miller model. What does Modigliani and Miller say? Modigliani and Miller says whether the organization gives dividend or not, the value of the firm will remain unaltered. So how am I going to prove it? The price of the share will be different, obviously, because the price of the share, I am subtracting D1 now. The price of the share will definitely be different when dividend is declared and when dividend is not declared. But ultimately, when you are arriving at the value of the firm, how do you arrive at value of the firm? It is number of shares into price per share. So while arriving at the value of the firm, you will arrive at such value that both when dividend is declared and when dividend is not declared, the value will remain the same. Okay. So now please take illustration 34. Please take illustration 34. What is told in this sum? X Limited has 8 lakh equity shares outstanding at the beginning of the year 2005. The current market price per share is rupees 120. The board of directors of the company is contemplating 6.4 per share as dividend. Contemplating means expecting to give a dividend, which means the given information itself is D1 only. Okay. They are contemplating to give a dividend, in which means they have not given the dividend yet. They are thinking of giving the dividend, which is 6.4 per share. The rate of capitalization appropriate to risk class to which the company belongs is 9.6%. Okay. Based on approach, calculate the market price of the share of company when dividend is declared and when dividend is not declared. How do you find the expected market price of the share, which is P1? It is P0 into 1 plus KE minus D1. How do you find whether they are asking you for P1 or P0? What is told in the question? Second line. The current market price per share is 120, which means they have given us P0. They are asking you for P1. They have given P0 now. The current market price of the share is rupees 120, which means they have already given us P0. They are asking us to find P1. How do you find P1? It is P0 into 1 plus KE minus D1. What if dividend is declared? It is 120 into 1 plus KE is 9.6%. So 0.096 minus the given information itself is D1, which is 6.4. You will arrive at P1 as 125.12. If dividend is not declared, dividend becomes 0, where the market price of the share becomes 131.52. Now don't jump. Don't say the price of the share here is different and here is different. Obviously, because here you are subtracting 6.4. Na? So here the price will be less and here the price is more. But ultimately, the value of the firm will remain the same as per Modigliani and Miller. How is this price of the share arrived? Based on P0 into 1 plus KE minus D1.
Having arrived at the price of the share, multiply with number of shares to arrive at value of the firm. Now what have they told? How many new shares are to be issued by the company? If the company desires to fund an investment budget of 3.2 crores by the end of the year, assuming net income for the year will be 1.6 crores. So they are planning an expansion program for which the organization is already having a net income of 1.6 crores, which is 1 crore 60 lakhs. Okay. How much is the fund required for expansion? 3 crore 20 lakhs. How are you going to find? They are asking you how many new shares are to be issued by the company. So, in excess of retained earnings, the money required for investment or for expansion is 3 crore 20 lakhs. On that, you already have a retained earnings of 1 crore 60 lakhs, which means the excess of requirement over retained earnings only you will issue new shares. Here, let me classify into two. One is when dividend is declared and when dividend is not declared. In both cases, your net income remains 1 crore 60 lakhs. When dividend is declared, your net income reduces to the extent of dividend paid. How much is dividend paid? They have told there are totally 8 lakh equity shares. X Limited has 8 lakh equity shares. 8 lakh equity shares and dividend per share is 6.4. When I multiply, I get a dividend income of 51 lakh 20,000. 1 crore 60 lakhs is the net income. On that, when I give away a dividend to the extent of 51 lakh 20,000, the funds available for expansion will be 1 crore 8 lakh 80,000. When dividend is not declared, the entire 1 lakh 60,000 will be available for funding the expansion program. How much is the money required for the expansion program? 3 crore 20 lakhs. On that, 1 crore 8 lakh 80,000 of the money you already have in the form of retained earnings. The difference of money only you have to raise by issue of new shares. So how much is the difference of money? It is 3 crore 20 lakhs minus 1 crore 8 lakh 80,000, which is this difference of money which you are going to raise by issue of new shares. Here it is 3 crore 20 lakhs minus 1 crore 60 lakhs, 1 crore 60 lakhs by issue of new shares. How many new shares are to be issued is the question. These much of money I have to raise, correct? How much is the market price of the share when dividend is declared? Just now we found market price of the share when dividend was declared is 125.12. When dividend is not declared, it is 131.52. So divided by the market price of the share, you will get the number of new shares to be raised for expansion. This number of new shares plus the existing number of shares will give you the total number of shares into the respective share price of the share into the respective share price per share. You will get the value of the firm. Here you have 60 rupees difference. It is because of decimal rounding off here and there. Otherwise, the value of the firm will remain the same when dividend is declared and even when dividend is not declared. Are you able to understand? I find the additional number of shares by dividing the money to be raised for expansion by the market price of the share, which I found when dividend is declared, when dividend is not declared. So I get the new number of shares plus the existing number of shares will give you the total number of shares into the price per share will give you the value of the firm or the value of shares. Here the value of share remains the same, 60 rupees of marginal difference. This marginal difference is because of here the share price you rounded off to 2 decimals, here also to 2 decimals. Here while finding the number of shares you rounded it off. So it is all in the approximations. It's fine. Is it clear? Is it clear? Very good. Right. So now coming to the next sum. Forget it. Forget your book. Just follow what I'm saying. Please take illustration 40. Illustration 40. Please take illustration 40. ABC Limited has 50,000 outstanding shares. The current market price of the share is rupees 100 each, which means P0 is rupees 100. It hopes to make a net income of rupees 5 lakhs at the end of the current financial year. The company needs to raise 10 lakhs for an approved investment expenditure. The company belongs to a risk class for which capitalization rate is 10%. Show how approach affect the value of the firm if dividend is paid and if dividend is not paid. What will happen? The value of firm will remain the same. They are asking you for that proof. Okay. So what is told? They have told the current market price of the share as rupees 100. They have told the company's board is considering a dividend, which means they have not paid the dividend yet, which means it is expected dividend, which is D1. D1 is 5 rupees. The company needs to raise 10 lakhs. We'll take it later. The cost of equity is 10%. How do you find P1? P1 is equal to P0 into 1 plus KE minus D1. So it is 100 into 1 plus 10% minus D1. So here it is 105. Here, since you are not subtracting 5 rupees of dividend, it comes as 110. Although the price per share is different, ultimately the value of the firm will remain unaltered. How much is the net income made by the organization? They have told it hopes to make a net income of 5 lakhs minus dividend. How much is dividend? 50,000 shares into 5 rupees per share is the dividend expected to be given. 2,50,000. So funds available for expansion will be the net money. How much money is required for expansion? 10 lakhs. So how much more should you raise by issuing new shares? Here it will be 7,50,000. Here it will be 5 lakhs of the difference. What will be the number of shares declared? It will be divided by the market price per share under when dividend is declared and when dividend is not declared. So you get the additional number of shares to be arrived. After you get the additional number of shares, how do you get the total number of shares? It will be the existing shares plus the additional shares. So 50,000 plus 7143, 50,000 plus 4546. Here you have rounded it off. Please remember 7143 and 4546, you have rounded it off. Okay. Into the market price of the share will give you the value of the firm. Here again you have a difference of 45 rupees, which was because of rounding off. Here it was 7143.333, 4546.66666, and so on. So because of that approximation only, you are getting a difference of 45 rupees per share. 45 rupees in the value of the firm. Otherwise, the value of firm will remain unaltered under Modigliani and Miller approach. Is it understood? Is it clear to everybody? Fine. So with this, dividend policy is complete. Illustration 35, I told you, strike it out. The question itself is incomplete. 7143 number of shares. 7143 number of shares is arrived as 7,50,000 divided by 105. 7,50,000 is the money to be raised. For every share, 105 is the share price. So how many number of shares you will get by dividing? Is this chapter clear? And except for illustration 35, I have covered all sums, correct? Illustration 35, question itself is wrong. Is it right?